Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good. And you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad it's getting a little warmer outside.
Oh, yeah. What a great afternoon. Eh?
Dawn is not in, is she, Marianne? She's not on the, she doesn't have a slide.
Oh, she does. Yeah. She has one slide.
I'll just text her.
Pretty sure she does. Yeah, she does. One slide for new development.
Okay. And it comes after,
It's down farther. It's close to the end.
Video. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of council for March 21st. Bienvenue au réunion de conseil pour le 21 mars. We'll begin the meeting this evening with the land acknowledgement delivered by Councillor Lavon.
Thank you, Madame Mayor. Donc, bonsoir, la reconnaissance des territoires. Je souhaite prendre un moment pour souligner l'importance du territoire sur lequel nous sommes rassemblés. La municipalité de Nipissing-Ouest reconnaît avec respect que nous sommes réunis sur les terres ancestrales des peuples Anishinaabe, sur le territoire traditionnel des Premières Nations Nipissing, Temagami et Dokis, désignés par le traité Robinson-Huron. Nous honorons leur lien historique avec le territoire et nous valorisons leur contribution considérable au façonnement et au renforcement de nos communautés. Ce faisant, nous réaffirmons notre engagement et notre responsabilité envers la réconciliation et l'amélioration de notre compréhension des peuples autochtones, locaux et de leur culture.
Merci. Okay, I'll take any declarations of pecuniary interest. None. We'll move on to the amendment first.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Pellerin. Be it resolved that the addendum for the meeting of council held on March the 21st, 2023 be approved as presented.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you.
It is moved by Councillor Pellerin and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that the agenda for the meeting of council held on March the 21st, 2023 be adopted as presented.
All in favor? Great, thank you. Okay, to open our meeting this evening, we're happy to welcome a delegation from the District of Nipissing Social Services Administration Board with 10 people on screen right now. I see, I got most of the names, but I think I'm missing one. So we have with us today Mark King, Chair of the Board, and Catherine Matheson, and then Dave Plumstead, Marianne Zadra, Lynn Desmarais-Pitre, Michelle Glab, Tracy Ann Bethune, Tyler Venable, and Melanie Shank. If I've missed you, I'm sorry. There's a lot of you there, but welcome, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and it's certainly my pleasure to be here. My name is Mark King. I'm a city councillor here in the city of North Bay, and I'm also chair of the District of Nipissing Social Services Administration Board. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of the DSAB members-elect. As per the DSAB Act, the Nipissing District Board has representation from the following: 6 members from the city of North Bay, which are councillors, and 1 mayor. 1 member each from South Algonquin, West Nipissing, East Ferris, Temagami, and the unorganized territories, both north and south. We also have 1 member from the eastern cluster of the town of Mattawa, township of Bondfield, Kelvin, Chisholm, Matawan, and Papineau Cameron. I did want to fill you in a little bit about our membership and our delegations at both AMO and Roma. And during those delegations, we've had numerous meetings with ministers, both at the provincial and at times the federal level, speaking to them about problems that affect the Nipissing district. We're also an active member of NOSDA, the Northern Ontario Service Deliveries Association. And I'm actually act as vice chair of that organization, which takes in 11 DSABs right across Northern Ontario. And at this point, I'd like to turn over the presentation to our CAO, Catherine Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Nice to be here this evening with all of you. We did bring all of our team members, all of our senior leadership tonight. That's why there's so many of us, so that you can actually put a face to the program area that they lead, just for your information. So just a couple slides each for us. The first one I have is on provincially mandated services. The majority of the work we do at the DSAB is a provincially mandated service, meaning that we are under legislation to deliver Ontario Works and employment assistance, children's services, which is your child care centers in early years, paramedic services, housing services, and then we have corporate services to support all of those programs. The geographic area we service is extremely large, and it's a population of 85,000. The way the government has organized DSABs is really to enable upper tier services such as social services and children's services, et cetera, housing, to be delivered for municipalities where they're too small on their own to deliver each of those services. So that's why they've organized DSABs. They do call it a bit of an upper tier government. We're made up of elected officials, but that's the size of our geographic area there. So we provide the same services in different contexts and different scope across the entire district. And the next slide. And my last slide for you is just indicate some of our holdings in West Nipissing. So we have an Ontario Works satellite office located at 94 King Street. You're surely aware of that, I'm sure. In Sturgeon Falls, paramedic services station at 168 Ethel Street. And we have NDHC, which is the Nipissing District Housing Corporation, a subsidiary organization of the DSAB, which includes all of the Housing Corporation assets. And we have the ones listed here, which are located in West Nipissing. You'll hear more about that from the director of that program. So now I'm going to turn it over to Melanie Shea, who's your Director of Corporate Services for the DSAB.
Good evening, everyone. The purpose of this slide is to explain the DSAB and NDHC's commitment to French language services. A staff-led French language services committee ensures ministry FLS guidelines are adhered to and that active offers of French language services are made in all of our offices. Next slide, please, Marianne. The DSAB is funded primarily by the provincial government and the municipalities that make up the Nipissing district. The apportionment of the municipal share of the DSAB budget is calculated using the weighted assessment method, which is the default apportionment method set out in the DSAB Act. This slide shows that West Nipissing's municipal contribution to the DSAB's 2023 budget was $3,467,087. I'll pass it over to David Plumstead next.
Okay, thanks, Melanie. And good evening, council members. I'm Dave Plumstead, the manager of planning outcomes and analytics here at the board. And together with the other senior team members here this evening and the board of directors, I'm involved with developing and implementing the strategic plan. So we thought we would just touch down on this briefly as part of tonight's orientation and presentation. So generally, our strategic plan is relatively new, having been adopted by the board at the beginning of last year. And it's really centered around the board's vision for healthy, sustainable communities and 4 long-term goals, which you can see on this screen here. Maximizing human service impact, so the residents of the district have the highest possible quality of life and well-being. Removing systemic barriers such as social issues, disparities, and inequalities, which we address and eliminate. Ensuring seamless access for our clients and residents in the district to make sure they can access the program services and resources when and where they are needed. And then continuous improvement and learning and growth. So the board strives to maximize investment and provide a strong suite of programs and services. We also have a set of strategic priorities and action items, but these are on a shorter time frame and they're renewed at the beginning of each board cycle. So every 4-year term in concert with the municipal election cycle. So presently we're just going through the process of updating the plan with our board, setting their priorities to help work on achieving these long-range goals. So a little view into our strategic plan. And now I will pass things over to Michelle. Thank you.
Thanks, David, and good evening, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Michelle Glad, and I'm the Director of Social Services and Employment, and oversee the administration of the Ontario Works Financial and Employment Assistance Programs for the DSAB. As you can see from this slide, as of February 2023, the total Ontario Works caseload was 1,808 cases with 2,992 beneficiaries, which includes applicants, spouses, dependent adults, and dependent children. Of this 1,808 cases, 242 reside in West Nipissing. Next slide, Marianne. As you can see from this slide, the Ontario Works program assists clients on their path towards employment, including those with disabilities and complex barriers such as addiction, mental health, poverty, access to transportation, phones, and internet, to name a few. In order to meet individual needs, a range of supports and services are provided to assist recipients to overcome barriers as they move towards employment. Referrals to community partners are also utilized extensively for services that are beyond the DSAB mandate. And I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Linda Murray-Pitt.
Good evening, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Linda Murray-Pitt, and I'm the Director of Children's Services Department. The Children's Services Department is designated as the district's Early Years and Childcare Service System Manager. The department is responsible for planning and implementing the various services and supports identified on this slide for the early years and childcare sector, as well as for families with children from infancy up to 12 years of age. DSAB directly delivers fee subsidy supports. However, many of the remaining services that are highlighted here are provided through purchase of service agreements with both for-profit and not-for-profit service providers. DSAB currently has agreements in place with 16 agencies for the delivery of early years and childcare services throughout the district. This slide represents the data and services as well as the funding available to families and service providers operating within the municipality of West Nipissing. So as you can see, we have several early on sites and licensed childcare programs operating within the municipality. And we do have some supports available to families. So the fee subsidy supports, we're currently serving 94 families and 145 children residing in the municipality. And now I'll turn it over to Tracy Ann Bethune.
Thank you, Lynn. So my name is Tracy Ann Bethune, and I'm the Director of Nipissing District Housing Corporation, also known as Housing Operations. We own 896 units offering tenancies to singles, seniors, and families across the Nipissing District. There are 10 apartment buildings, 2 of them large high-rises of over 100 units, and the remainder of the housing stock are townhouses, row houses, semis, and single detached homes. The portfolio mix includes rent geared to income units, as well as low market rent units. 150 of NDHC's total stock are situated within the West Nipissing area. And now I'll hand it over to Tyler Van Abb.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Venable, and I am the Manager of Housing Programs. I'll be presenting on behalf of Housing Services. Housing Services is responsible for the administration and funding of a variety of programs across the housing continuum, from homelessness to homeownership, as you can see from the graphic on the slide. Next slide. In terms of housing stock and subsidies, DSAB oversees a large social housing stock and several subsidy programs. West Nipissing currently accounts for 17.2% of the district Nipissing's total population, however, accounts for 22.3% of Nipissing's housing stock and subsidies that are administered by the DSAB. DSAB also administers two programs that are aimed at homeowners: the Homeownership Program, which offers down payment assistance to help with the purchase of a home, and also the Ontario Renovates program that assists low to moderate income homeowners with funding for home repairs and renovations. The Ontario Renovates program has actually been very successful in West Nipissing. In fact, since 2016, the program has assisted 22 households and has provided a total of $430,150 in funding for home repairs in West Nipissing. And also that accounts for 40.7% of all Ontario Renovates recipients since 2016 as well. I'll pass it over to Donna Mayer.
Good evening. My name's Donna, as Tyler said, and I'm the manager of project development. I'm responsible for new housing development primarily. On the slide, you'll see all the various ways that the DSAB is involved in new housing development. Mostly we advocate for funding from the upper levels of government, and we leverage our local funds through sales of properties that we no longer need or that we acquire and resell to help build some capital to develop new housing. You'll see that the National Housing Strategy has a lot of money available in the billions of dollars to develop new affordable housing through Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And we work to leverage funding from those sources. And I believe you're familiar with some of that funding in your community already, as well as the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing that often has funding available. We sometimes run requests for proposals for these funds, or we coach and provide information to developers so that they can access the federal and provincial funding. As Tracy said, we have Nipissing District Housing Corporation that acquires and holds properties on behalf of DSAB because the legislation doesn't permit DSAB to borrow enough money to develop housing. We have participated in shovel-ready projects or getting projects ready for shovel-ready proposal calls. We compete on a national basis when we do that. So we haven't been successful so far, but we continue to make all our best efforts. We have increased the number of subsidized units in the district through the acquisition of Mackay Homes, which is a former federal project that was sold. And then also through the creation of Northern Pines, which is a transitional housing facility located in North Bay. And I'll turn it to my colleague, Stephen, in Paramedic Services.
You're on mute, Stephen. Yeah.
There's always that one guy. I apologize. Paramedic Services went under review in 2020. A recommendation was made to the board to consider direct delivery, and that direct delivery of Paramedic Services came to fruition on December 1st of 2022. Paramedic Services includes 911 responses, community paramedicine programs, emergency first response teams, and medical tiered response design. We work with a lot of local agencies to support our 911 service. Paramedic Services profile currently includes approximately 105 personnel with opportunities to expand, particularly in the community paramedicine program. Community paramedicine started in a very small scale in 2016, and then in 2021, there was substantial investment from the provincial government into this program. It was that allowed our service to expand services to ensure that there was coverage across the district. To date, our community paramedicine program in West Nipissing has approximately 12 active patients. This number fluctuates depending on the needs and demands of the community. And to that, I will turn it over to the last slide of strategic plan.
Thanks, Stephen. Basically, our strategic plan at this particular point is a 20-year strategic plan that's been developed over a great deal of time. Certainly, we look forward to fulfilling an awful lot of those impacts that actually are created inside communities. So I'll leave it at that, Your Worship, and certainly open for any questions that you or your council may have.
Thank you very much to all of you for coming tonight and answering our questions. As you may have heard, we have an almost entirely new council outside of Councillor Redpool, who sits on your board. So having an introduction to the services that you provide to the people of the municipality is extremely important for us to be able to understand. With that, I'll open it up to questions from the floor to our members of council. Or comments? Okay, I have a few. Thank you very much. When I was looking at the slides, specifically in regards to the municipal apportionment, the amount that the municipality of West Nipissing contributes makes up a little over $3.4 million. Now, it seems that, and that's quite, we're the second largest contributor after North Bay. And I kind of did a little math because I was looking at representation on the board, and if our board representation were equal to what we were paying into the program, we would have 1.84 seats on the board. So like the map that determines how the boards applied, when was that developed, and has there been any look at changing that to be more representative of the contributions made by municipalities?
Well, that's an interesting question you have. Actually, it hasn't been addressed in the last 7 years that I've been there as chair. Certainly, that was an ongoing discussion with Dan Rovita when he was a member from the last council. Certainly, I think there's probably room to take a look at that representation. I can tell you it is. It's quite a job as chair to make sure that the biggest member of the organization, which is the city of North Bay, doesn't supersede the smaller communities such as yourself and, South Algonquin, Mattawa, all of those different smaller communities that are represented on the board. So it is difficult, and I certainly, that's probably food for thought. But I'll leave it to Catherine. Maybe she wants to speak to it a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. It is an excellent question. As communities grow at different rates and speed, then it becomes a bigger issue for those of you that are growing quicker than others. We know this is the Ford government undertook a governance review in the last term. There was a few municipalities, regional municipalities, that were trying to change their terms, and they're in or they're out of the regional government, et cetera, and their seats and all kinds of stuff. And at the end of the review, at the end of that situation, really nothing changed. So not trying to be pessimistic, but just to say that there's not a lot of movement that happens on these fronts, but certainly your audience would be through AMO or for Roma with respect to having delegations to go forward to the government. But there's been a lot of discussion from different jurisdictions over the years, and I don't think a lot of movement or change. But as the chair said, it's a worthy comment, but you might want to pursue that through the AMO or Roma delegations that you can request to the government.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate you addressing that. I just wanted to kind of flag that for you because we do make up, if you look at the allocate or the apportionment, the next four largest municipalities put in about as much as we put in individually. So, you know, it's just making sure that because we're such a large population center, that there is a focus on providing services in our community for our community. I'm sorry, I do have a couple of questions on social services and employment. I just had the question, you have it listed here as 1,808 cases and 2,992 recipients. So what's the difference between caseloads and recipients? Because one would assume that they would be the same number, but so I just want to understand that.
Yep, the caseload, it represents the number of cases, but when we add the beneficiaries, so that includes your spouses, your dependent adults, your children, when we add all of the members of the families together, that's how come that's why it's a higher number. That's why you get up to the 2,000 and change number.
Okay. Sorry, on the slide on the housing, the portfolio mix includes rent geared to income units as well as low market rent units. Just for all of us, so we can understand the difference between those two terms, please.
Sure. So rent geared to income is established based on 30% of one's income. And the low market rents are rents set based on a market rent index and therefore substantially lower than the regular private market.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think, oh, and just one question on paramedic services, please. So when you look at paramedic services, is it very much a regional delivery model, or when we look at the paramedics that are responding out of our unit here, are they in West Nipissing all the time, or how are resources deployed and managed to make sure that there's adequate coverage, you know, in West Nipissing at all times?
There's ongoing assessment on call volume, et cetera, but we have what we call a district deployment strategy, and that deployment strategy ensures that resources are focused on the core areas. So based on that model, we do have regular coverage, and I'd say 98% of the time there's paramedics in West Nipissing. Due to some of the regionalization of healthcare, it does take them out of their encatchment area, and we would support them through resources through other bases.
Okay. And how is service affected by wait times for patient offloading? Because we've all heard about, you know, sometimes long waits at hospitals. So how does that impact your operations and like the number of kind of hours that are taken out of service waiting for patient offloading?
I must say we've been pretty fortunate as a district and with our hospitals, both in West Nipissing and North Bay being our primary receiving hospitals. We haven't incurred substantial offload delays. We are starting to see a bit more of that. So we are working collaboratively with the hospitals on strategies. Programs like Fit to Sit is something that we're looking at introducing into our local hospitals, and looking towards some offload resource funding that may become available through the province as well.
Thank you. That's it for me, but I do have a councillor with a question. Councillor Pellerin.
Merci, Madame Mayor.
Go ahead.
Just on page 27, paramedic service, says today, community paramedicine program has approximately 12 active patients. What does that mean?
Our community paramedic program is where we take paramedics into the homes of individuals and provide care to try and prevent hospitalization. So these are individuals that may have chronic disease, that may have difficulty accessing mainstream healthcare, or they have conditions that we can treat in the home as opposed to having them go into hospital and try and keep them at home longer. So like I said, this number is revolving depending on what the community requires at the time. So we work on a referral basis through a number of collaborative efforts with things like the hospital, home and community care.
So is it just like a one visit, or is it like like a patient that you would go see more than once?
It could be as simple as a wellness check and an assessment, and then we would make a referral to another resource. Some of the caseloads we carry on for 2-3 months at a time. We're more of a gap stop for some of the more longer term programs that could get into the home and provide ongoing care.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Resto?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thanks to everyone, to the chair and to Catherine and the team. There's a lot of work. As you can see, we went through it very quickly, but there's definitely a lot of work that goes into the services that are provided to community members here in West Nipissing and across the Nipissing district. And just wanted to say thanks for being here this evening, and looking forward to the meeting tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you. I will echo Councillor Resto's sentiments. Thank you very much, Mr. King and Ms. Matheson, and your entire team for being here. We do appreciate the work that you do, and I know that Councillor Resto will be working hard over the next 4 years to help drive the organization, and we're really happy to have him as our representative on your board. So thank you again for your time this evening, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good luck, Jamie. We'll see you tomorrow.
Night.
Night.
Okay, thank you very much again to DSAB for coming here this evening. The next item on the agenda for this evening is under a committee of the whole to economic development. Jerome, would you like to do the introductions?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Kursin.
It's all good. Thank you, Catherine. For today, pour aujourd'hui, on a l'étude sur le logement, une présentation par Paul Hicks et Jesse McPhail. Donc, je vais passer la parole au directeur Stéphane Poulin.
Thank you, Councillor Costin. As you mentioned, we do have Paul Hicks and Jesse McPhail from Public Urbanism. And they're here to present an overview of the housing development study that has been undertaken over the last little while. And I'll pass it on to you, Paul.
Take myself off mute. Thank you so much, Stefan. And I'm not sure, Jesse, do you have sharing privileges?
I'm just going to share screen here, if that's okay.
Great. And if everybody can see
everybody can see that okay?
Yep.
Very good. So
I'm
we'll
not
get
sure
started.
if that's my share or his, because I was,
Oh, did you hit the?
I'm
share
sharing
button
as
at the
well,
same
so
time?
I'm not sure whose presentation.
But regardless, we can, no, you can see his desktop,
That's
right?
me there.
Yeah.
I'll stop. There we go.
Okay.
Very good. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. So as Stefan had mentioned, my name is Paul Hicks, and I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Jesse McPhail. We're both urban planners from an urban planning and design consultancy called Republic Urbanism. And we're here this evening to present the findings of the draft West Nipissing housing strategy, which is a project that we've been working closely with Stefan and his colleague Cassandra on for the better part of the past year. So if we could go to the next slide. In terms of what we wanted to talk to you about today, we're going to walk you through the strategy and the process that got us here today. Specifically, want to chat a little bit about the project itself, the background work that was undertaken in support of the project. We'll provide an overview of the strategies, and then we've also provided an opportunity to field some questions and to talk a little bit about next steps. We do understand that council does have a very busy agenda this evening, so we will try to move quite quickly through particularly the about the project and the background work to focus on the recommendations and the strategy. With respect to the project team, there were two firms that were involved in this. As I mentioned, myself and Jesse are a part of Republic Urbanism, and we conducted the research analysis, planning, and the community engagement and the development of the strategy. And we were supported by Project Colliers, we were supported by Colliers project leaders who undertook the overall project management of this file. So with respect to a little bit about the project, in terms of the housing landscape and in terms of the context we're working in, it likely comes as no surprise to Council that municipalities in Ontario and the rest of Canada are facing extreme pressures related to housing provision. When we speak about housing provision, we're not just speaking about one form of housing or one tenure of housing, but housing across a spectrum. And our friends from the service board, you would have seen they had brought, there was one member of the service board who brought up a copy of the continuum, the housing continuum, which is one way that we often articulate housing. We also articulate it in terms of a wheelhouse, and this includes all forms and tenures of housing, whether they be emergency shelters all the way to market rate housing. With respect to West Nipissing in particular, we see a housing system that's been challenged by high costs, low vacancy and availability, and a lack of choice in new housing for residents. And this has led to an overrepresentation of home ownership as it relates to other forms of housing across the spectrum of the wheelhouse. To go to the next slide. So a little bit about what this project is about. Well, at its core, this project was about creating a 10-year strategy to guide decision-making and resource allocation to address housing provision and the challenges in West Nipissing. And this is not just related to housing conditions in Sturgeon Falls, but it's related to housing across the entire municipality. So if we could go to the next slide. In terms of project timeline, there are 3 primary phases which the project was conducted. We conducted the background analysis through April and October of 2022. Then we also conducted simultaneously or concurrent to that the consultation and visioning process, which ran through July to October of 2022. And the development of the strategy stretched from the actual strategy itself, stretched from November 2022 into February and March 2022. And that's what's brought us here today. So if we could go to the next slide. I'm going to speak a little bit now about the background work that was conducted. Again, I'm going to try to keep this at a high level, but certainly if there's any questions that Council may have with respect to any of the analysis that was undertaken, I'm happy to field that. So with respect to existing conditions and housing needs, the background analysis was developed in 2 parts. And the first part of that background research was focused on data collection and data analysis, which helped us to understand issues around things like population growth, what kind of housing we're going to need in the future for West Nipissing, and a little bit more about understanding the cost of housing as it relates to the community's demographic makeup. If we could go to the next slide. The second part of the background research was focused on community engagement, and this included 2 primary exercises. The first was the posting of a bilingual online survey about housing need in the community, and the second was a bilingual online workshop that was held with members of the community. In total, we had over 300 touch points in the engagement process with residents and stakeholders within the community. And we would say for a community, particularly of West Nipissing size, this is something to be very proud of and shows there was a real interest with the public and with stakeholders in the community and concern about the future of housing in West Nipissing. If we could go to the next slide. In terms of the key findings and insights that we found through the background research, we identified that there's a projected minimum need of a little over 1,100 new dwellings by 2031. 416 of these are meant to address projected growth in the community. So those residents that don't yet live in the community, but will live here either through increased birth rates or through in-migration to the community. And the remainder, approximately 730 units, are needed to address social housing waiting lists that exist in the community. One of the other key findings that we found through our research was an extremely low vacancy rate for rental housing, so less than 0.5%. This is not uncommon that we see, particularly in communities of West Nipissing size, but it is, again, something that we need to attempt to address. And this is not just a social issue, but is also an economic development issue for the community. We also identified that there is a limited diversity in the existing and planned housing stock within the community, and that single detached dwellings make up approximately 70 to 75% of existing housing stock in recently completed and planned builds and new subdivisions. So one of the things that was identified, particularly when we were looking at the demographic makeup of the existing community and also the future needs of the community, we need to diversify the types of housing that's being provided. So not just single detached dwellings, but this could also include apartments, it could include semi-detached dwellings, row house dwellings, etc. And one of the final key insights and findings that we found was almost 20% of households are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. 30% is kind of the magic number that CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, uses as their threshold. So in the sense that households are recommended that they should be spending no more than 30% of their gross income on housing. And we see that over 20% of the population of West Nipissing is spending over 30% of their gross income on housing, which is a concern that we would want to see addressed. With that, we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy overview. I'm going to pass the microphone over to my colleague Jessie McPhail, and Jessie is going to walk council through the strategy itself.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Jessie McPhail. I'm a planner with Republic Urbanism. So I was working from sort of start to close to the finish here on this project. So it's been kind of fun to get to know your community and really dig into some of the data and analysis. So as Paul had mentioned, we set out to develop a 10-year strategy for West Nipissing to follow. And really the strategy at the heart of it, it's looking to guide housing provision and tackle challenges that the municipality is going to have to face over the next couple of years. And it's not only challenges too, it's just really helping the municipality to, organize resources and start to think about how other combinations of planning documents and policy can all intertwine to help achieve a successful housing landscape in the community. So in terms of the strategy itself, this strategy again establishes a vision and 5 kind of key objectives for housing provision in the municipality over the next 10 years. So this vision and the objectives were largely based off of the background work that we had done over the last year or so. Within the strategy and the kind of the meat of the strategy is the action plan. So this action plan is largely split up amongst the 5 key objectives that are contained in the strategy. And these actions are largely designed to help the municipality tackle and achieve those objectives over the next 10 years. And then lastly, as part of the strategy as well, we've prepared a high-level implementation timeline to help the municipality take a look at what should be prioritized in terms of some of these actions. So, are these short-term priorities, ongoing priorities, or long-term? And I should note, it is our understanding that members of council will or have yet to receive a copy of the strategy, but it's our understanding that they will be receiving it in short order. So we will be providing a high-level summary of the strategy and the actions tonight. Again, happy to answer any questions that may come up, but we're really looking forward to having council dig into the document. So in terms of the vision itself for housing in West Nipissing, this is what the project team and the project team at the municipality, as well as ourselves, rested on based on the work that we had carried out. So the vision for the housing strategy is West Nipissing is a community where all residents have a place to call home that is suited to their needs, regardless of income, household size, age, or ability. And so really this reflected a lot of the sentiment coming from the consultations that we had done, as well as the background work that we'd carried out. As mentioned, there were 5 key objectives identified for the strategy. So these were promote and protect rental housing, diversify housing supply, encourage the right type of housing. And again, the right type of housing here being speaking to more diverse forms and addressing the needs that are in the community. The 4th is develop partnerships and coordinate advocacy. So again, meeting with the Social Services Administration Board today, we had actually coordinated with them for a lot of the data that we used in our research as part of the backgrounding. So DNSSAB is one of those kind of partners that will be important as this strategy goes forward. And last but not least, monitor implementation and report on progress. So I'm going to walk you through each of these objectives and the actions that at a high level that were identified to realize these actions. And again, I won't be going too in depth in terms of detail, but happy to answer any questions. And again, we're excited for you to dig into the document where there will be some more meat for you to take in. So in terms of the action plan itself, so we have the first objective, which is again, promote and protect rental housing. So we have 3 actions identified for this objective. The first is the development of a rental unit registry. So this will generally involve the tracking and monitoring of new and existing rental units in the municipality to not only look at ensuring code and bylaw compliance, but also to supplement CMHC data, which is less frequent. So typically every 5 years, along with census, that more frequent data collection and ongoing data collection will really help the municipality grasp what kind of stock is in play. The second is looking at developing a short-term rental bylaw. So this would allow the municipality to consider licensing and or regulation of short-term rentals. So these would be things like Airbnb, vacation homes, which can sometimes have negative impacts on the existing rental housing stock in a community if they are unchecked. So again, this would be developed with stakeholders in the community to make sure that the municipality is not overreaching on certain things and still addressing the community's needs. And last but not least, considering the development of a rental protective demolition control bylaw or policy. So this would look at protecting existing rental units and ensuring that those living in rental units are not displaced due to premature speculation or demolition of existing rentals prior to a redevelopment plan being in place. So the second objective, diversify housing supply. So there were 4 key actions for this. However, I had kind of merged the 2 of them for brevity here, but the first 2 primary ones, and it's our understanding that West Nipissing will be undertaking this project likely in the near future, is a review and update of the official plan and zoning bylaw. So these are kind of the 2 primary documents that guide sort of growth and development in the community and really establish an overall vision for the municipality. So the original documents, I believe, are around 10 years old, and so they are in need, obviously, of an update to keep up with legislation and changes in best practice and contemporary planning. So 2 of the recommendations in the strategy do look at reviewing and updating the official plan and zoning bylaw with a particular focus on housing supportive policies and regulation. It's the second one on the slide, but it would be the third action for this objective, which would be addressing affordability as part of new development. So briefly, this action would see the municipality play a more involved role in educating and promoting targets for affordability as part of the development process. So for example, if an applicant comes in with a proposed plan of subdivision, at its simplest form, this would be ensuring that they're addressing the affordability objectives of West Nipissing within their planning rationale, and ensuring that council's satisfied that they have done their due diligence and they have put an effort into addressing diverse housing stock and your goals for affordability. And lastly, I'm sure members of council are likely familiar with Bill 23, which was given royal assent in the fall. This was a bill that introduced sweeping changes to the Planning Act. So in a specific effort to facilitate more housing development and affordable housing development. So this action obviously triggers a need for municipalities to take a look at their documents like official plans and zoning bylaws and site plan control bylaws to make sure that they're in conformity with that legislation. So this action would see the municipality undertake that conformity review to make sure that they're on the right side of that bill. The third action, or the third objective rather, is encourage the right type of housing. So again, this is the municipality taking on more of an active role in encouraging a more diverse housing base and the housing that's needed in the community. So the first action here that's recommended is the development of a housing-focused community improvement plan. Traditionally, community improvement plans have been used, to improve main streets and support businesses and kind of downtown commercial areas. More and more recently, a lot of municipalities are developing housing-specific community improvement plans that would offer financial incentives or other grants or incentives in the form of fee reductions, tax rebates, development charge relief, those sorts of things to help facilitate the development of affordable housing or desirable forms of housing in the community. The second action would be to inventory and review municipal lands for housing opportunities. So West Nipissing actually owns a considerable amount of land, and we discovered that through our backgrounding exercise. Not all of these lands will be appropriate or should be appropriate for development, and a lot of the lands do contain public facilities, so these will be important to obviously maintain. But one of the actions that's being recommended is that the municipality to undertake a fulsome, in-depth analysis of these lands and start to catalog sites that may be suitable to accommodate. It was kind of mentioned earlier, shovel-ready sites for maybe affordable housing or a potential partnership opportunity with a local developer to create more affordable or diverse units in the community on public land where the municipality would have a great degree of control over the realization of that project. The third one for this objective is fast tracking affordable housing approvals. So this action would ideally see improvements to sort of the internal application processes associated with planning and development and building to make sure that affordable housing projects are prioritized and carried out as quick as possible, while still ensuring that we're meeting our legislative requirements for reviewing and good planning. And lastly, this one kind of dovetails with the development of a housing-focused CIP, but this would be considering the waiver of fees or charges for specific types of housing. So in order for the municipality to offer these types of incentives or grants, this does require the development and adoption of a CIP under the Planning Act. But additional supports that could be offered under this type of action would be things like parkland cash in lieu, development charge fees, or other fees related to applications like building permits or rezonings or the like. And the next objective is develop partnerships and coordinate advocacy. So the first action for this objective would be engaging with social and nonprofit housing providers at a more formal level. So we do understand the municipality does have great relationships with their housing providers. Case in point, DNSSAB here providing a delegation to council and providing that information. But in terms of housing provision and working towards the objectives of West Nipissing, it's recommended that the municipality seek to engage with these organizations either one-on-one or as a group to help tackle housing. So some of the primary providers of nonprofit housing in the community are Nipissing District Housing Corporation, West Nipissing Nonprofit Housing Corporation, Wakunsuk Native Nonprofit Homes, Residence Mutuelle, and Ontario Aboriginal Housing Support Services. So these are just a few of the providers here. The second action for this objective would be to communicate with housing adjacent community groups and organizations. So what I mean when I say housing adjacent community groups and organizations, we're talking about organizations and agencies that work with at-risk populations or populations that have varying degrees of marginalization. So we're talking about seniors, Indigenous peoples, those with disabilities, or people experiencing homelessness. These populations often do experience a higher degree of challenges in obtaining housing and suitable housing. So it'll be important for the municipality to coordinate with these organizations and see if some efficiencies and some supports can be realized. The third action is advocating to senior levels of government for housing support. And I know the municipality, as with many, are already likely doing this on the regular. But the federal and provincial governments have earmarked considerable amounts of funding to address issues with housing provision. However, it is imperative that the municipality do advocate and lobby senior levels of government for funding to be directed to West Nipissing. And this would, again, ideally be through help from local stakeholders and organizations in order to form a strong case for those monies. The next one is maintaining an open and ongoing public communications on housing. So this one's sort of simple on the surface, but it is really important. A common communication strategy between the municipality, the public, nonprofit housing providers would be really beneficial to the community in understanding the supply that exists in West Nipissing, as well as where some gaps exist as well. Really important to educate the public on progress as well. And last but not least for this one would be to consider pursuing builder or contractor recruitment and retention. So this would be more of an economic development exercise to look at addressing one of the primary barriers that was identified by staff being the insufficient workforce numbers in the construction community. So this in turn, having lower availability for developers and builders in the community slows housing production, and it also has the potential to increase costs due to demand. So West Nipissing should explore more formal initiatives and partnerships to look at attracting and retaining businesses and professionals, whether it be educational institutions or actual developers, and attracting them to the community. And the final objective for the strategy is monitoring implementation and reporting on progress. So these were 3 actions here. The first one being, and this should be kind of step 1 for the strategy, would be to identify a municipal housing point person. So this would look at identifying a member of staff, whether it's an existing position or a member, to champion and lead the implementation of the strategy. And this will really ensure that the strategy has a face and is accountable to someone, so that they can monitor it throughout the lifespan of the strategy. The second is developing a housing data metrics and monitoring program. And so this would really be looking at collecting data as part of normal processes like building permit applications, zoning applications, things like types of housing being built and costs and locations, services, just maintaining a concurrent data collection process for new housing so that the municipality, again, can supplement those 5-year housing surveys with more up-to-date data from year to year, so that council has a better idea of how you're progressing on housing in the community. And lastly, it's really important that staff do conduct regular reporting to council on housing progress in West Nipissing. So this would be simply, either on an annual or a biannual basis, reporting to council on progress of any, actions being undertaken and the status of housing, whether conditions have improved or the key issues that have arisen, just keeping council and the public in the know through association. So I do understand that was probably a lot to take in, and I assure you, members of council will be receiving that copy of the draft strategy in short order, which will provide quite a bit more detail. But in terms of next steps, again, in terms of implementation, I just wanted to show very briefly that recommended implementation timeline that we had put together in the back of the strategy. So again, it's important to remember that it's a 10-year strategy, so it's not intended to be implemented overnight, and it'll be important decisions that council needs to make in terms of what they're prioritizing from year to year and where resources are going to be put. So again, this will involve ongoing commitment, collaboration, and resources. And it also requires coordination on all municipal fronts. So for instance, the planning department, the building department, economic development, infrastructure, all of these have potential impacts on housing provision in the community. So we need to make sure that we're really working as a single unit as we work to tackle housing over the next 10 years. So with that said, I will maybe pass it back to you, Madam Mayor, and maybe if there's any questions or comments. I understand it was a lot of information, but we're happy to answer any questions there may be.
Thank you very much. I'll actually pass it to Councillor Crushane to.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Are there any questions or comments? Oh, okay. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess one question I had, it's not so much a question, but a concern. So I saw 1,145 dwellings needed by 2031. And then that 20% of residents pay more than 30% of their income on housing. So those are alarming numbers, but I wonder, are they only going to get worse with the way that the market's going, or has that been taken into account as well? Or should we maybe be aiming, for 1,300 dwellings by 2031? Or is that all taken into consideration here?
So
same with the cost.
Yeah, very, very, very good question. So obviously, we do our best to provide the best projection and estimate of what that future is going to look like. But we definitely don't have a crystal ball. So I would say my answer to that would be, it is a static document in the sense that it is a 10-year plan from kind of this year moving forward, but it also is intended to be massageable or living over the next 10 years. So part of the action plan and reporting back to council and having sort of that municipal point person to monitor the strategy, part of that should be looking at keeping an eye on those numbers, particularly the affordable housing numbers, and then the number of houses being constructed from year to year, and those sort of those targets may shift. They may shift for the better. They may increase, but it's definitely something that the municipality would be encouraged to try and keep tabs on from year to year.
Thank you. Yeah, that answers my question, because I know we've been growing pretty quickly compared to some of our neighboring municipalities. So I was wondering just how much this will keep going on. That's it.
Any other questions, Madam Mayor?
Hi, I just want to say thank you both for coming to do the presentation. I actually participated in the online housing workshop back, I think it was in April, if maybe in early May. It was quite some time ago, but I will say that I was impressed not only with the way that the consultation was done, but there was a great amount of participation. Like, I can't remember how many people were there, but I do remember specifically that the input that our residents were providing to you was really impressive. And I remember just being really impressed with what you were getting from our residents, and I can't but imagine that was really helpful as you started. So that was one of the first steps in this whole process. So thank you for that. I think a lot of the recommendations that you've given there are great. I know that I've already, I sit on the planning board with a couple other members of our council, and we are looking forward to doing the updates to the zoning bylaw and the official plan. And I think that there's a lot of things that we can do with those documents that will help address and make things more attractive. I think right now we have a limit on multi-story buildings of 3 stories. Which is a little low when you're trying to look at, getting developers interested and getting projects to the size where it makes sense financially for the people who are investing. So there are a lot of different things that we can do with that zoning bylaw that may help us to address. So I do appreciate all the different recommendations, and I know I, for one, will be very interested, as will Mr. Sharma, our clerk planner, in kind of going through those recommendations and seeing what we can do at the planning level to try to address those. And that's really, it's not really a question, but more of a statement. But thank you. I do appreciate it, and I really look forward to reading the entire document.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are there any other? Oh, yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just on that note, Madam Mayor, we will be providing all of council with the full report and all associated data as well. So council will be able to see how we've come to this conclusion. And we'll also be sending the documents to our Economic Development Advisory Group as well. We've indicated that to them today. So they'll get a firsthand look at it as well. And we'll also be putting the documents on our website shortly as well. So they're public documents, and anyone from the public could access that through our website. So that'll be done shortly as well.
And could we also ask that that be sent to the members of the planning committee as well?
Absolutely, we can do that. And we were planning to also share copies of it with our social housing agencies and partners as well. So we'll do that. And just in conclusion, if I may, Mr. Chair, I do want to thank Jesse and Paul and their entire team. And I also want to acknowledge the key role that our Economic Development Officer, Cassandra, sitting in the back here, played throughout this entire process. And I also want to let council know that Paul and other members of his team will be back in front of council in April to present the strategy for our warehouser land use. So we look forward to that as well. So thank you to all.
Mr. Puni, any other questions or comments? Councilor Duval?
Just a quick one through you, Mr. Chair. I will be receiving that document, and I was wondering, the one thing that really caught my eye was the pursue builder, contractor recruitment and retention. I kind of work in the residential field a little bit, the construction field, and I know it's an issue that everywhere they're all having that issue. So I wonder, in that document, will there be some sort of concrete examples maybe that other municipalities have done, or I know you've touched on a few ideas that you had, like having some training within the municipality and such, but I'm just wondering if that'll be touched on.
So the recommendations in the action plan themselves, they won't necessarily go down to a specific, like a very specific direction, in order to allow for that flexibility for the municipality to explore. So we could certainly look at providing some examples of similar programs if that's desired. But the way that the actions are structured, it's more of a recommendation framework and some items for consideration, and it really allows West Nipissing the flexibility to kind of make that their own and work with stakeholders in the community, builders in the community to see what may work. But we could certainly follow up. I don't know, Paul, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, it's certainly just a couple of points to add. I think Jesse was quite correct in that this is very much more of an economic development initiative when this goes to implementation. But some of those kind of to throw out a couple other examples of some of the great programming that we've seen in other municipalities. When we look at the kind of long-term provision of trades in the community or encouraging people in the community, so that's building relationships with local technical colleges. And encouraging recent graduates to attend those local technical colleges and to come back to the community to practice their trades on one end, and also even just reaching out to the development community within the broader region, and to some of the development community that may exist in some of the larger cities like Sudbury and North Bay, and even just reaching out to say, hey, have you ever considered coming to West Nipissing? We've got a great community that is growing, and we're looking for additional supports in building housing in the community. So there's a wonderful range of programming that can occur under that umbrella of recruitment and retention of trades, both kind of long and short-term programming. But certainly, yes, we're certainly happy to expand on some of those ideas and some of the other programming that you'll see in other municipalities.
Thanks. Yeah, Jesse did touch up on it very well about like the issues with contractor retention and recruitment. So I'm thankful for that. And I didn't realize that you guys were the ones who did that Weyerhaeuser study. I was part of that consultation, and that one was very good. So I'm looking forward to hearing what's coming up. I saw some of your other planning aspects for other municipalities, and it's really encouraging to see what we may be coming up with here. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Now I'll return it to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you again to you both for the presentation this evening. And I guess we'll see you in a couple of months to talk about all the exciting things we might be able to do at Weyerhaeuser.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Bonsoir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, we'll get moving on quite quickly because we do have a large agenda to try to conquer this evening. So 5.2, we move on to emergency measures and public safety committee, and for that I'll pass it on to the chair, Councillor St. Louis.
Thank you, Worship. So I would like to take this opportunity to pass the floor to Chief Lufin to talk to you guys about the fire master plan. It's always.
Hey, Madam Mayor and members of council. Tonight I bring forward a request, if you will, to look into the fire master plan and strategic planning for the municipality of West Nipissing. The idea of the plan is to develop long-range strategic planning framework to guide the priorities and objectives of the West Nipissing Fire Department. Master plan provides council and senior staff with a strategic planning framework to deliver fire protection services over the next 10 years, as West Nipissing is expected to continue to grow. The fire master plan also includes a community risk assessment, CRA, which paints a picture about local needs, circumstances, and is used to inform decision-making, including establishing service levels for the fire department. Fire master plan is guided by public education and prevention, fire safety standards and enforcement, as well as emergency response and fire suppression. The province legislated in 2018, and it came into effect July 1st, 2019, under the regulation of 378-18. All municipalities are required to perform a community risk assessment. This has to be completed by 2024. Once it's completed, then we're looking at every 5 years to review it in a fulsome, but do an annual review on the fire risk assessment. This looks at your geographics. This also looks at your demographics, what you have for education, what you have for equipment, and your success rates, if you would. This is a very large undertaking, especially when you're doing the initial. So I'm requesting council for approval to begin looking at a third-party consultant or a consultant team to be able to perform this and join the fire master plan as well as the community risk assessment plan in one document to be able to present to council and then be able to build from there and move forward. At this point, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Burwell.
I couldn't have done any better. Just one point on it, where are we getting the money? As we indicated to you in a variety of other formats, we received funding a few years back. It was called a modernization fund that the government of Ontario has provided so that municipalities, rural municipalities, small and rural municipalities can look at their processes and find ways of improving their processes to be more efficient and effective. And so we still have money available through that fund. And so there wouldn't be any impact on the budget at all. So I think, this council has shown in its short tenure its willingness to look at strategic planning and looking at long range, at least knowing where you want to go, not necessarily that you can afford to get there in the short term, such as I think DSAB mentioned, they have a 20-year plan, and this has an implementation of 10 years. And certainly the fire master plan and the outcomes of a fire master plan would certainly would be lovely to implement very quickly, but at least it will provide this council and future councils with a roadmap as to where we can go in the future. That's all, Mr. Chair. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Barbeau. Any questions from any members of council? Councilor Gagné.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, I guess since we're taking on this this initiative, we don't have a master plan currently. Am I correct? And no risk assessment plan?
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair. In the past, the province required us to do what they called a simplified risk assessment. The simplified risk assessment basically looked at your number of calls, what type of public education programs you had, fire prevention programs, and your inspections. This gets into more details. It's a rather large document, as I mentioned. So it takes into account with what the province is now requiring us to perform, looking at your needs assessment, looking at your equipment, looking at your training programs, looking at the amount of risk, the frequency of those risks, and how you're addressing them. So you may have a high risk, for example, let's say something in the downtown that we've seen in the past, but it doesn't happen very often. So are we training and do we have the equipment to be able to address such a situation? Wildland fires, that's a common risk that we see. The members are trained to be able to deal with that. With the climate changes they're announcing, we're seeing more and more of these wildland fires and they're growing substantially quicker. Do we have the resources? Do we have the capabilities? Through some of our agreements with M&R and our neighboring municipalities, we do have the capabilities, but again, as I said, they are growing. So this takes a look at all of that and be able to provide council with direction, if you would, or recommendations as to here's where we are, here's where we need to build to, and how we planned, pretty much the same as what we did through the budget process when we looked at our equipment and stuff.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor? Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Directly to Chief Leffin. Excuse me. What is the approximate cost to have one of the, like the study as you're talking about it costs? And I won't hold you to it because I know the number will likely come back to council, or I don't know whether it has.
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
I may, through you, Mr. Chair. Past experience, there are a couple companies that do provide this service. In the past, when I looked at this in my previous career, we were looking at roughly $50,000, but that was including a population of roughly 5,000 people. If I use comparators that I've seen through places like London, places like Sudbury, you're looking at roughly 105,000 in around that range. And again, it'll depend on population size, geographical area that we're covering, and that's where they're going to base their prices.
And about what is the timeline? So, you know, from when council says yes to when you do the RFQ to when we'll actually see a plan, how about what are we looking at for timeline before we would see?
I would think they would probably start late summer, early fall, by the time we get the RFQ out and council approves the recommendation. And at that point, depending on the amount of information that they have to go through, how much we can provide them during that research, and then they develop their reports, I would think would probably see something maybe early spring of 2024.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Those are my questions. I'll make one quick comment. We're all so thrilled to have Chief Leffin join us, and we see big changes already coming through in the fire department, in the recruitment stuff. And I think this is an excellent opportunity to set strategic priorities and to really understand how our service works for our community, and really give the chief a map as he looks to build, modernize, and make more efficient the service that we're able to offer our residents. So I think it's a fabulous idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions? No, so just a comment for me. I think this ties in very much into everything we've spoken about tonight, and we've just heard about how our community needs to grow between approximately 1,200 new homes within the next 10 years. And I think with our fire department, we definitely need to develop some sort of risk assessment and some sort of master plan so that we can be able to assist whether some of that housing is in Field or River Valley or Cache Bay or Laving or Verner, or even here in town. We need to figure out a plan on how we'll be able to serve an additional 1,200 to 1,300 homes. So I think it's a great thing to have, and I think it's quite time to start doing it. So.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to add to that, I did a quick calculation with our previous presentation. If we're looking at 15, we have currently a population roughly of 15,000. Adding another 7,400, 7,500 people, if I take looking at 18,000 or 1,800 new homes, roughly 4 people per home, that's going to increase our population at 22,000 by 2031. Just quickly driving some numbers from the previous presentation. So something for council to keep in mind.
Hey, what do we need for action here? Just,
To you, Mr. Chair, Madam Mayor, we'll have a resolution authorizing staff to initiate the process of recruiting a firm to conduct a fire master plan. That'll happen next week, or first meeting in April. There'll be a resolution, and we'll proceed from there.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the next item on the agenda, we're going to move to our Public Works Committee, and 2 items on for that committee this evening. With that, I'll pass it to the chair, Councillor Gagne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, if you
Actually, on this one, I have a conflict because I get my haircut there, and I want it to either be ruined or whatever. I don't want to be. So I'm going to have our clerk planner, who actually worked on this file in the past. So Melanie, if you can just speak to what is before them with respect to the request, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As indicated in the memo that I provided with the agenda, as well as the additional information which was provided by our Public Works Manager earlier today, this matter has come up before. And the recommendation of the Public Works Manager, for the reasons enumerated in his memo, is that the location in which the dedicated parking is being requested does not meet the ADODA, which is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities legislation with respect to the size of the proposed parking space. In addition, onloading and offloading of vehicles could pose both a safety risk to the persons getting in and out, as well as to pedestrians and automobiles pedestrians on the sidewalk and automobiles on the street. The other issue is the fact that the parking place, although designated for persons with disabilities, could not be dedicated on a public road to a specific business. It would be a parking space that would be open to anyone as long as they had the correct sticker. I can't think of the name of it right now, but if they had the permit in order to use that space. So for the reasons indicated in the memo and in the past, the property owner does have room on their own property to accommodate their accessible parking and would be able to provide the proper spacing and signage. And municipality does support businesses in West Nipissing with enforcement of their accessible parking. So through our traffic and parking bylaw. So the recommendation would be that the owner reconfigure the parking on their own site in order to accommodate the parking. This way, it would be dedicated for their patrons, and we could assist with enforcement.
Merci beaucoup, Mélanie. Madame Ducharme. Any questions from the council? Councilors? No questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's whether you, if you agree with the staff report, then we'll have to kindly indicate to the business owner that we would not be amenable to having handicap parking on the road as contemplated. And it could either be a resolution, or if there's a consensus here that is the case, then we'll just notify the owner, of council's decision.
Okay. Any objections on that? Good.
Yeah, I should have got my haircut first.
Me too.
Thank you. Back to you, Madam
Okay,
Mayor.
yes, I'm sorry, there was only one item for that. And our last committee for this evening is community service, of which there is 2 items. And for that portion of the meeting, I will pass the chair to Councillor Rivard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First on the agenda for Community Services Committee would be in regard to the ice rental policy. I would pass this forward to or Mr. Poulin.
I would pass it on to Counselor as
Sounds
she
great.
requested it. I'm not sure.
That's it.
We discussed, so.
Councillor Mufard. Yeah, after reviewing the policy and the situation with the conflict, I did notice there could be improvement as far as updating the policy with respect to the usage of the calendar, as well as the communication within management as to the allocation of the ice. And there could be other items too that may be looked at from other groups with respect to the rental of the ice. In April, there was discussions with some groups that because the ice could be removed earlier or later, depending on, I'm not sure if it's the usage, there could be some more clarification to the policy.
Mr. Poulin, would you have any?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, if council wishes, we can certainly go back and have a look at the ice allocation policy and come back to council with some recommendations. It's a policy was created, I believe, back in 2016. So there's probably, there's probably some things in there that we could improve, change, amend. So if it's council's wish, we can certainly have a look at it and come back.
Open up the floor to any comments, questions in regard to that. Councillor Colshine.
Thank you, Councillor Rivard. I guess just for to be able to understand, I guess, the bigger picture, the policy that was enacted in 2016, was there situations that arose that warranted the need for a policy?
For you, Mr. Chair, that's a good question, Councillor, and there was a need to come up with a policy. Believe it or not, ice scheduling is very contentious. It's one of the most contentious things that Community Services Department deal with. And so that policy was put in place in 2016 so that it would be clear and it would be easier for staff to implement the policy than just having ad lib situations. So that policy has really served us well. I think the policy does work well, but the user groups have to understand the policy and follow the policy as well, because as municipal staff, that's what we do. So anytime that there's a gray area, as staff members, we like to see policy because it's much easier for us to manage. Yes, to answer you, it was put in place because we felt that there was a need for it, and it's really served us well. And moving forward, there's certainly some improvements that could be made and some changes.
Yeah, I mean, if the policy works as it is now, the policy could be amended to really a small communication error. The user groups are fully informed of the policy and when they're supposed to book and how they're supposed to book. The gap in communication was that when the one group booked the policy booked ice as per the policy, the department failed to notify the calendar. But that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that the policy worked properly. So we could amend the policy with a small addition to indicate that once a request is approved by the director, if that's who approves the policy, that it will be put on the calendar as soon as practical. And that's really the only thing that happened. And I don't want to go back on that, but there was a lot of miscommunication on what actually happened on that. And so I'm going to defend staff on that. The issue that was at hand was that if those groups wanted to book the ice, they knew how to book the ice, and they should have. When they booked the ice, or when it was learned, they were communicated that there was a conflict. So I think in future, and Mr. Poulin acknowledges that this situation hadn't come up before because the groups should know how to book. But given the fact that they hadn't booked in the appropriate manner, Mr. Poulain will endeavor now to make sure that it's on the calendar. And so we can add that to a policy, and then I think it should be resolved going forward.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I just may add, in this instance, it wasn't a matter of ICE not being available for all the user
Right.
groups involved. It was a matter of not, a certain group not accepting the arena they were assigned to. There's no issue about ICE availability. Both arenas are open. Everything was good. It's just one group didn't like the arena they were assigned to. And that's essentially the core of the matter, but we'll address it. We'll move forward. And there's always room for improvement and improving communication and whatnot. We'll endeavor to do that.
Councilor Restal, do you still have your question? You had, okay.
It's for you, Mr. Chair. My comment on it is I agree that the process that's in place, the policy that's in place worked. There was some small wrinkle, but things were done as they should have been done. And it's unfortunate, it's a difficult situation, but I think it was dealt with the right way. In terms of reviewing the policy, I think that's probably fair governance, right? For a policy that's 7 years old, take a look at it, see if there's things we can improve and refresh it. And just leaning on my hospital board experience, we have regular review policy there too. So it doesn't mean there's something wrong with the policy. It's let's take a look at it. Is there anything we can tweak to make it even better? But I think in this situation, unfortunately, there was some conflict from different groups, but I think it was held and handled well. And looking forward to just having a quick look at this and tweaking it where we need to.
Sorry, Conseiller Tessier, raise your hand.
Oh, yeah, I just want, with the calendar being updated as soon as possible, that would help so that it shows that it's booked. Had they known that the Sudbury, the Sturgeon Arena wasn't available, they would not have proceeded with moving forward back in November when the coach asked if they want to pursue that tournament. Thank you.
Mayor Shaw.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm sure that since this has come up, I mean, it is an opportunity for community services if they do identify any other areas of the policy that can be changed to make it better. I think our staffing complement has changed since the policy was brought about, and the way the bookings are done and this and that. So I think it's a great opportunity for staff to take a look, especially when it's such a difficult portion of managing the community services portfolio. That there's an opportunity here to make a couple of tweaks and a couple of updates that address what the processes internally look like now. And so, again, I think it shows a great community spirit that the two user groups were able to come together and reach a compromise, in the face of all this. And I'm looking forward to being there for the puck drop on the Tournament of Champions next Friday. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Conseiller Pellerin.
Thank you, Mr. Rivard. Just a quick question, Mr. Poulain, on the ice rental policy. I don't know if it's part of that, let's say like for the tender, for the canteen and burner, is that part of that policy?
No.
No. Is there a policy on it?
There's no, through you, Mr. Chair, there's no policy per se, but like a written policy, but we have been following the same procedure over the last several years. We have advertised for the Verner Canteen to try to find an operator, and no one came forward. And we advertised it multiple times, and it's been very difficult to attract an operator of the canteen in Verner.
A point of order that this isn't actually on the agenda, so we want to keep, if you do want to bring that back so we can talk about how to address that, let's bring it back for the next community, but community services committee of the whole. But I want to make sure that when we're at council, we're actually sticking to the information that's on the agenda. Otherwise, we'll be here till 11 o'clock tonight. But we'll talk and we can put it on the agenda for next time, because I think it would be nice to be able to find somebody to offer those services for the residents.
Very good. I just thought it'd be part of the, just asking.
Yeah, no problem. I allowed you to ask it because I was like, oh, it'll probably be over fairly quickly there, but if it would have done a round table, yeah. But thanks, Conseiller Pellerin. Yeah, in regard to the ice rental policy, my comment would just be similar, echo to Councillor Resto, Mayor Rachel, Mr. Barbeau, and your comments as well, Mr. Poulin. It seems like it's really difficult to please all the user groups, especially even though we do have two ice rinks in town, but we have lots of people who want to use these rinks, and obviously everyone wants prime location, prime time, prime dates. So it makes it a little difficult, I imagine, but I do agree that there has been some confusion. Mistakes may have been made, not pointing fingers at who, if it's a user group, if it's staff. But maybe this is a good idea to review the policy and maybe tighten up on those gray areas so that these types of things could be avoided in the future. And we could just keep going on with ice rentals. So that's my comment. And do we all agree that, I guess we'll look for common consensus that everyone agrees that we should perhaps review the ice rental policy by show of hands? Yeah, unanimous, all right. Thank you. Thank you. So, do we just power through this last one?
Yeah, let's do the last one and then we'll do break.
Sounds great. So, this one was added just earlier today, a request to use parking areas by a local group named No More Tears. It looks as though No More Tears on April 2nd would like to utilize a public parking space downtown where Stella the Sturgeon is located. And they would like to put some cones on three, I guess right on King Street, three parking spots to make sure that people could come and go to drop off their items as needed. I'll pass it along to Mr. Poulin if there's anything to add
Yeah,
to
through
that.
you, Mr. Chair, if council wishes to support this request, we'll gladly assign staff and work with this group. And, whether it's barricades or it's pylons, we'll certainly assist them in any way we can. If council agrees with providing those parking spaces for that day, then we'll gladly support this one.
Yeah, and sorry, this group, No More Tears, their aim is to help deal with homelessness and maybe anybody in need in our community. So these items would be used to support anybody who use the items. My comment alone, or I guess I'll open the floor up first for any comments, questions, concern. Oh, Councillor Resto.
Wasn't here for one of the meetings, so I want to catch up on my screen time here. Thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's a small request for a really good-hearted initiative within the community. And I think if there's staff that are available and it costs a couple of pylons and a couple hours of time, I think it's great to support community members who are engaging in this. We just heard a presentation on DSAB and some of the challenges with homelessness and people who aren't as fortunate. And if we can help a little bit through this and help this group, I'd be supportive for sure.
And my comment would just echo that I believe that this is an ask, and I appreciate the group came forward asking for this with an amount of time, so we make this decision and help them out the most we can. So I guess by a show of hands, would it be unanimous that we support this initiative passed? Thank you. And that ends portion for community services. Pass it over to you, Madam.
Okay, I just need a mover and a seconder for recess. Councillor Restall, Councillor St. Louis.
It is moved by Councillor Restall and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. At approximately 8:10 p.m., a motion was tabled for a 10-minute recess.
All in favor? Thank you. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to move on to number 6 on our agenda, which is planning. Madame Duchamp.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Pelletier. Be it resolved that bylaw 2322 to grant draft approval to a plan of subdivision file SUBD 2023-01 on Browns Island, being Island 193 in the Township of Bertram, shall come into force and take effect on the day that it passed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barbo, do you want to?
Not on this one, as it's a planning file, and so it really stems from the planner, and
Okay.
I don't like to touch those.
Okay, do you want to give that brief overview?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that my report and all of the information that was provided in your package, there was quite a bit of stuff, including all of the correspondence that we did receive, and there was some additional correspondence included in today's addendum. The application, as indicated, originally came forward as a zoning amendment and a subdivision application. The zoning amendment was subsequently withdrawn as a result of having reduced the number of proposed lots from 9 to 8, which brought the lot area into conformity with the existing zoning bylaw. So that application was withdrawn. And so the application is strictly for a plan of subdivision of 8 lots, all having an area in excess of 1 hectare and frontage in excess of the minimums required in the West Nipissing zoning bylaw. The report, as I said, it's fairly comprehensive, and I won't bore everyone with the details. So I'll let Madam Chair just.
Okay. The information provided on this application is quite substantial, making up about 100 pages of our agenda this evening. So I will trust that you've all had the opportunity to read through both the report provided by Madame Duchamp and the supporting documentation, the emails, both for, in support and against the application. And at this point, I'll take any questions on the matter. Councillor St. Louis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Mayor. I'm trying to find it when I read through it. There was one portion that a gentleman from Gilkeys, Mr. Restul, I believe his last name, was stating that a archaeological survey should be conducted. Was one done? Are we aware?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the proponents have met with the representatives of the Dokis First Nation, and they have agreed to undertake the archaeological assessment of the property as requested by the First Nation, and it has been included as a condition of the draft plan approval.
Perfect. That's all I wanted.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Cochet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just really wanted to start off with thanking staff for their time and their expertise on this. I fully trust staff's expertise and time spent on this. Not being in the loop with the application since possibly last Wednesday, last Thursday, I wasn't aware of all of the concerns that were brought forward. I now see the bigger picture with all of the information. Thank you again, Madam Duchamp, for this. It's greatly appreciated, the information provided. Considering, I guess, the comprehensive nature of the information that was provided, I will have to say that for tonight, I wouldn't be comfortable in making a decision. The reason being, I would like to have a little bit more time to digest the information. Again, I'm not, in any way, shape, or form questioning staff's ability. I fully respect and admire staff's abilities in doing so. So, for that reason, I would move to defer the matter to the first meeting in May. And the reason is to just provide a little bit more time given the complexity and the comprehensiveness of the file.
Okay, so at this point, we have a motion to defer on the table. And so I would, pardon me? Oh, I need a seconder for the motion to defer, please. Councillor Nicol? Okay.
We'll vote on the deferral.
Yeah, we'll vote on the deferral. If anybody has a comment about the deferral, no debate on deferrals. Okay, so we'll make a vote on the deferral. All those in favor of deferring to the first meeting of April?
You said May.
May, oh, you said May? Yes. Oh, okay, sorry. All those in, I don't know, I don't have the date for that. I think it's the 1st of May, is not? Second. Second? So, 2nd of May? I don't have
It is the 2nd of May.
Thank you. Okay, so all those in favor of deferring this item to the meeting of May 2nd, please raise your hand. Okay, that is defeated. Okay, we're back to the original motion. Do we have any other questions or comments from members of council? Councilor Rivard?
Through you, Madam Chair, I was just wondering if this would be the correct time to maybe discuss any potential conditions placed on the approval or?
Okay, yeah, that's this page, right? In page 206 of the of your agenda package, you have the conditions for the draft plan of subdivision. Do you want to go through those quickly? Just
No, that's okay. I'll just grab my stuff. Through you, Madam Chair, there are a number, obviously there are the normal conditions that we impose on every subdivision in terms of plan and so on and so forth. With specifically to this application, there is a condition that the archaeological assessment be carried out prior to final approval. In addition, the owners will carry out an environmental assessment of the property with a focus on fish habitat and water quality as part of the conditions. Can't find my, Anne's didn't print the whole report. Can I just borrow that? Thank you, Madam Chair. In addition, there is a requirement that there be, in addition to the subdivision agreement being registered, there's also a recommendation that there be restrictive covenants placed on the property, which will address buffering, septic system requirements, as well as the any recommendations which may arise as a result of the technical studies being undertaken. So, for example, if there was, in the environmental report, there was a recommendation to say, be set back so far from a certain kind of trees or from a certain area of the shoreline, all of that would be included as well. We've also indicated that it would be, the owner would include in their agreements of purchase and sale when the time comes and if final approval is given, that all of the conditions of council be included in these agreements of purchase and sale so that owners and potential buyers are aware. Obviously, they are required to get approval of all on-site septic systems. Will have to obtain approval from the delegated authority for that, which is the North Bay Lateral Conservation Authority. There will be buffering, as I've indicated, and like I said, any final approval will take into account the recommendations of the environmental assessment as well as the archaeological study.
Okay. Thank you. That answer your questions?
Yeah, I guess the one is, I had noticed about the 15-meter vegetative buffer from the waterfront to any development, but it doesn't stipulate they're going to need some sort of path to get to there. So I know in other municipalities, they'd be like, 10 feet wide or a percentage of your frontage could be removed from that vegetative buffer. I don't know if we need to stipulate anything like that. It could avoid issues maybe in the future, or also like a vegetative buffer along the property lines as well. I've seen that before.
And those are all, if council wants to, increase those or add to what I've already recommended, that's perfectly fine.
Seems a little quick, I guess, yeah. But, yeah, no, I don't have any definite ideas myself as.
There are no buffers set out for a property.
On the side. Well, with the lots being 2.47 acres in size, it would be unlikely that the lots would be, there wouldn't be just buffering as a result of that's a lot of trees.
Yeah.
But we can certainly include it as a condition.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, I believe the main issue would be from the waterfront. It seems like most of the concerns are coming from maybe passerbys on boats or neighboring cottage properties. So just wanted to make sure that we were adding that clause in there, that there is a vegetative buffer. It could really help with the aesthetics on the French River and preserve that whole feel while you're boating in the French River or fishing. Is 15 meters enough? I don't know if that's something that council would want to
I think that
discuss.
15 meters is through you, Madam Chair, 15 meters is typically the amount that is set out in the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook for vegetative buffers and what most municipalities use. It's 50 feet.
Yeah.
So
I feel comfortable with the 15 meters. I was just asking maybe if you did have any information on that stipulation of how wide their access point could be.
They're all going to have docks.
Yes.
And so they'll all have to have.
Typically, like they'll cut some of that vegetation within that 15-meter buffer. So
I would think somewhere between 3 and 5 meters for access would be, so that'd be 10 to 15 feet.
it's nice to have a
Comfortable with
definite
that?
number.
Okay. So
I'll,
I would need to put that.
we're talking about the conditions. They're not in the bylaw. They're what they are. I can change the schedule to the to the draft conditions if council would wish additional wording.
Okay. So do I want to do, is that about what Chris said or a new item?
Buffer, yeah.
Okay, so Monsieur Pader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to refresh my memory, Melanie, we already have in our zoning bylaw 15-meter buffer on lake frontage, which is half of the lot size, right?
That's correct.
So that would increase to the full length of the,
That's
there's already, yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll just take a show of hands on Councillor Rivard's amendments that he's suggesting, and that's to specify an acceptable width for a pathway through the buffer to the shoreline and appropriate lot line buffering, or is that too prescriptive?
I would have to ask council. I personally, on a lot that size, it would not, it's not the purpose of the shoreline buffer is to protect the water quality. Visual attenuation, generally, people don't want to see their neighbors anyways, but, certainly council, if they want to.
I'm speaking more shoreline.
Yeah. Okay. So would council be in favor of adding a maximum pathway through for the buffering, shoreline buffering for access?
4 or 5 meters?
That's a question.
Okay. Yeah,
Madam Mayor.
Councillor St. Louis.
I believe 100% we need to put something, because if you don't put something in writing that limits them to opening, whether it's 20 feet or whatnot, they can remove whatever they want. I have a family member that, and I think at his home, it's 20 feet. Mind you, that's Quebec, so it might be different. It's not in meters, but I think it's 20 feet is all he was permitted to utilize.
So would 6 meters be a acceptable number for?
Yeah, through you, I think 6 meters would be fine, because then you could access with any machinery if they need to, well, primarily to build the home or build their sewage system or things like that. So you would need it a little wider than 3 meters.
Put the document out. Okay, so just a show of hands so we can get And this isn't to approve the whole thing. You can still, but if we were to approve it, is everybody in favor of that amendment on the conditions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. Okay. Okay, other comments or questions on the application? Councillor St. Louis?
Through you, your worship. Madam Chair, I'm reading through it and unless I'm not seeing it, correct me if I'm wrong, but during our planning, was there not a stipulation that anybody purchasing a lot, they would have to take the owner to build their camp to ensure that they would follow with the proper or the same septic service and so on and so forth? Was that not brought up at our planning?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think that was raised by the developers. I don't believe that we can dictate who builds.
Okay.
We can dictate the standards of building, but I don't think we can actually dictate who the physical builder is. I believe that was though mentioned by the consultants, that the owner and applicant, that is his intention to do.
Okay.
I'll just explain that for Councillor St. Louis, Councillor Tessier, Councillor Gagne, and myself had the privilege of actually having a planning meeting with this application before us. So this, for us, this is the second time that we've seen the application. So we may have information that was provided at that planning meeting through the presenters that isn't included in here, but I do recall that the plan of the developer was to also be the builder for these lots, but again, that's not something I think we can prescribe within the approval. So, okay, other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, with that, we will put it to a vote. And so all in favor.
Request a recorded vote for.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna have a recorded vote for that, and I don't have my list of alphabetical order, and that's a lot of thinking to do. I know you're first,
And
Councillor
they're
Cushing.
here in alphabetical order, so I'm just gonna go from the list. Councillor Rivard?
So yes, is we support it?
Yes,
Yes.
is you support it.
Yes.
Councillor Gagne?
Yes.
Councillor St. Louis?
Yes.
Councillor Restoul?
Yes.
Councillor Nickel?
Yes.
Councillor Tessier?
Yes.
Councillor Courchaine?
No.
Councillor St. I think I did already. Councillor Pellerin, sorry.
Yes.
Mayor Rochelle?
Did you, oh, you went to, oh, you did, Jerome, yes.
It is carried.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is for the planning fees and council. Madame Duchamp.
It is moved by Councillor Pellerin and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-23 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2011-12 to set fees and charges under the Planning Act shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Okay, so this was an item discussed in our committee of the whole last week. Does anybody have any further questions to this resolution? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? It's carried. Next item, Madame Duchamp. We're gonna.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Pellerin. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-24 being a bylaw to accept, assume, and dedicate public lands or lands for public highway purposes. Part of Lot 2, Concession 2, Parts 3, 6, and 9, Plan 36R14773 in the Township of Springer, being part of the traveled road known as Goulard Road in Sturgeon Falls.
Okay, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried, thank you.
It is moved by Councillor Pellerin and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-25 being a bylaw to accept, assume, and dedicate lands for public highway purposes shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed. Part of the north half of Lot 8, Concession 1, being Part 2, Plan 36R14527 in the geographic township of Grant, being part of the traveled road known as Dubuque Road in Crystal Falls.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Pellerin. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-26, being a bylaw to assume and dedicate lands for public highway purposes, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed. Part of the north half of Lot 8, Concession 1, it being Parts 1 and 4, Plan 36R15032 in the geographic township of Grant, being a different part of the traveled road known as Dubuque Road.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to move on to correspondence and accounts. We've got some minutes.
It is moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that the minutes of the meeting of council held on March the 7th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Questions, comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Rivard. Be it resolved that the minutes of the budget meeting held on March the 8th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council budget meeting held on March 15th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Rivard. Be it resolved that the minutes of the following boards and committees be received. West Nipissing Committee of Adjustment, January 30th, 2023.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Whew, that was fun. Next, we'll move on to the new business, and again, we've got some bylaws to.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-27, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council of the corporation of the municipality of West Nipissing, will come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Again, we did speak of this in the committee of the whole at the last meeting. Do we have any further questions or comments? All in favor? Carried, thank you.
It is moved by Councillor Restoul and seconded by Councillor Tessier. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-28, being the bylaw to amend bylaw 2005-49, respecting construction, demolition, and change of use permits, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. With that, we get to the mayor's report. I don't really have a lot to add, except that for those who haven't heard the news yet, I will share that we were very fortunate to host the Honorable Victor Fedeli, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. I knew it was in that order. And Laurie Marcel, who is a board member from NOHFC last Friday for a funding announcement at the field rink. It was announced that NOHFC will be contributing $500,000 in addition to monies raised by community members, a very generous donation of $140,000 by the Caisse Alliance, and a contribution from the municipality to proceed with the construction of a roof over the Rankin Field. So that's a very exciting project for that community. It's going to change the public space up there and really provide residents something great. The same announcement, they also confirmed their contribution of 67. Is that correct, Councillor?
67,500.
67,500 towards the upgrade of the septic system at the Centre Communautaire de Living. So we're very fortunate to receive the support of the provincial government in those two great community projects, and two projects that have been spearheaded by a lot of really hardworking people in the communities to bring those projects forward. So I just wanted to share that, because I think it's great, exciting news for the community, and I think that's all I'll share for this week. Thank you.
It is moved by Councillor Tessier and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, that council pursuant to closed meeting is authorized to discuss the following litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications for that purpose, regarding a legal update regarding MX Constructors. So we will stop the live stream.
We have to vote to go in.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay, any questions, comments? All those in favor? Carried.